And that's why I call this a young woman's perspective on just a woman's journey. Okay. Eller, you're doing some really cool things with technology and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and bringing people together. But today, we're not going to be going over that one. We're going to be going over your thoughts about women. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so we've had it from the perspective of, how people see each other from the spiritual side, from with Annie, Lori earlier, and now we're here. So this is actually brought to you by the Creators 2030, the Peacemakers, COM26, Miranda Clendenning, David Gershon, and several other people. Okay. And it's really about us bringing the world together, sort of. So this is a blueprint for what women think, and it will be put together by all of us. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about women. Okay.
Wonderful.
Your place. I want to talk about the whole gamut, not a good or bad, but just where we can learn, where we can move forward. And that you're comfortable with sharing, because this is like a conversation. This is not an interview, okay?
Yeah.
What do you think, especially as someone who's a young person, okay, kind of sort of like in that middle between young and old, okay? Mm-hmm. And when I say old, I don't mean old. I mean just like, you know what I mean? Like someone who's 8 years old is a young girl, you know what I mean? Yeah. And someone maybe 38, 48, 58, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're actually in a great place because you get to see both sides. You get to work with being, an adult is working, but then you get to see what the little girl is looking at.
Yeah.
And how we as young, middle-aged, and older women carry ourselves. Mm-hmm. If you were to sit down in an office environment, private sector, okay?
Yeah.
When you were a little girl and you were just looking, you were just observing how women engage with each other. I want you to be honest and tell us, what do you think that little girl would be seeing in her eyes?
This is a very, very interesting question. I think a big thing for me would always be about support, or the lack of support, maybe. And I would have seen this when I was little, also when I'm now, and I just think that the most, there seems to in the world, and a lot between women, there's often competition, or there's kind of, okay, well, she does this, I need to do this better. As a child, this is kind of how I felt. I was always in competition, or I was always feeling like I always had to do better. And, I kind of had these challenges with my friends and stuff like this. Whereas I think actually the most important thing is to empower each other, and to think, okay, well, yeah, you're brilliant at that. So actually respecting and understanding that woman or that girl or whatever is also brilliant. It doesn't put you down in any other way. And I think this seems to be quite a lot of the case in a lot of situations, is if you see someone really, really succeed, then it almost makes you feel like you're not succeeding. Whereas actually, I think it should be kind of more of, okay, that woman's succeeding, that woman's doing amazing, so brilliant for her, rather than being, okay, well, that means I'm not doing good enough. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we just had Annie on earlier. This is something that I totally agree with you on. And it's an interesting place, because what Annie was saying earlier is you have to know who you are. So mm-hmm. I love what you said about being younger, because you were looking at your parents and other women and how they were engaging. Mm-hmm. And so when you're first a young girl, you only go by what you see. Yeah. And that navigation becomes what you learn at home, what you learn in school, Mm-hmm. But what have you learned since being that little girl? Let's say you're watching that little girl sitting in your office right now, Eller.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned, or what do you think that little girl will learn as she grows older like yourself?
I think, honestly, the most valuable thing that I've learned, and this is for almost every part of my life, is to understand my value. Really know that I can do this. I'm worth this, or in some bad situations, maybe I don't deserve this. I deserve better. And I feel really, really privileged that I have learned this, because I speak to so many people, and so many of my friends, so many people that I know, they haven't reached this point before. They don't understand their worth. They don't know how brilliant they are. And I've kind of got to the stage where actually I'm quite proud of who I am, which is almost kind of difficult to say, because I think as a woman, or maybe for men too, I'm not sure, but it's almost it's quite difficult to say to say this, to kind of being like, actually I'm quite pleased with what I've done. I think I'm quite a good person, or at least I try to be. But I think that it's that this feeling of almost confidence in who you are, just being like, I know who I am, and I know that I deserve the best, and as does everyone else. So, it's just getting to this stage where knowing what situation I want to kind of be in, and knowing that if I'm in a situation I don't feel comfortable with, or something like this, or if I'm being talked in a way or whatever, then actually to notice, actually, I don't deserve this, I don't want this. And as well, to respect others, to look at other women and being like, you're really seeing that, and trying to show them the respect that they deserve, everything that they deserve, and to have this view of themselves, because it's not about really how other people see you. It's about, for me, it's very, very internal. It's having this confidence in yourself and being empowered yourself, knowing, yeah, I can do this. And doesn't matter if someone tells me I can't do it, because I'm going to do it anyway.
The other side of this is, it's a learned, so this was this a learned behavior in your home, or did you have to learn this on your own?
This was something I learned on my own. And it was more really just going through teenage years and stuff like this, and actually a lot from relationships, from being in kind of situations where I'm like, actually, I don't deserve to be treated like this, or I don't deserve to be talked to like this. And unfortunately, it's been, through quite a lot of situations like this, where I've been like, actually, no, I don't feel happy about this. That's made me realize, okay, I deserve better. So it wasn't really from my family. I was very, very lucky with my family. My family always made me realize that I deserve, and I think everyone does deserve the best. But it took a long time for me to realize this myself, just through my experiences, I suppose. Yeah.
Let's go a little deeper, Eller, okay? And then we'll bring it back to the business. So, what kind of learned behavior at home? What was some of the behavior that you saw at home? Was it that your mother was taking care of things all the time and all of that, or what was the difference? Because I think that's what a lot of people face. As Annie and I were talking about earlier, the learned behavior at home as a woman, and then that behavior that you learn when you go out, because you still have the environmental factors within yourself that you've learned from home.
Yeah.
Okay. So how was, you said you learned it through a teenage stage. Has your mother ever said, I wish I had learned that at my teenage stage, or I'm so glad that you guys know things more so now than what I did when I was growing up? Do you hear things like that from your mom?
Actually, very much so, yeah. From, and I have done from kind of the other women in my family, my auntie as well, and they are just kind of saying, oh, you're really lucky, that you have got to this stage, and that you realize, I suppose realize your worth. Because I think it wasn't the same. My mum had me when she was quite a bit older, and and then she is also coming from my kind of from my grandparents. From one side, my granny was at the time, when I was kind of growing up with my granddad, she was quite repressed. Both of my grannies were quite, they were seen as they had this role of being a woman, which was to do these certain things and stuff like that. Well, one of them is not with us anymore, but they would be both in our very late 90s, so but there's been such a change. And now that my granddad I still have, and she's she's 98 and she's a very, very strong woman. And my mom has, been brought up with her. So she's always known this. My mom has always been like, she's been a very, very independent woman, but she hasn't known her worth. She still doesn't really see her worth. But yeah, I have to answer your question. Yeah, I have had quite a lot of the women in my family saying that, that because it's a hard thing to notice. And I think some people think that they're being selfish if they realize, actually, no, I don't deserve that. And they kind of accept what happens to them. So yeah.
That is something I really want to go to. And that's why I can't wait to bring Annie back on, because that of being a woman growing up, learning to being independent, assertive, but still not knowing their self-worth is like an ongoing battery or roboticness within themselves that was just taught and learned behavior. Can you say a little bit more about that and how you see that in the workplace with older women, and the possibility that could happen with that young girl that I said, pretend she's in your office right now looking through that same lens? Yeah. And I'll go with a little bit added to this question, Eller. Do you find yourself falling into that paradigm too at times, even though you've learned more?
For myself, it's not something that I notice, to be honest. No, I feel like I'm very lucky, and I have from all the women around me, I suppose, and just maybe it's my generation, or I live in Barcelona. Everyone is so open and so able to do things, and but going back to my mum, she was she was a very independent woman. I mean, she is a very independent woman, but she still kind of has like this confidence in knowing that she can kind of do what she wants. She still has this, she doesn't realize her potential, I suppose.
This is really an interesting one. They don't realize their potential as women, okay? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where sometimes the insecurity comes in the office place.
Yeah.
When you are, excuse my expression, a real badass, when it comes to being in the office, you can do your job, you can, be a senior VP, a CEO, but you still don't know your potential. You are great in these areas, but you don't know your potential as the human being, as the woman that you are.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't get it. And I think that's the important part, is that we don't get it sometimes. And it's not because we don't want to get it. So it's like, how do we bridge that? And that's what I love about you. Started to take the time to look within in the relationships. Did you do any journaling? Did you do any meditation, Eller? Did you do any exercising? What helped also? Because as well as we learn it, we have to have something that facilitates and keeps the consistency within us so that we grow as women. Can you say a little bit more about some of the practices you have?
To be honest, I tried journaling on and off for a long time, and to be honest, it wasn't. I tried. I always forgot. So this was not a tool that worked so much for me personally. I did do a lot of meditation, but again, it wasn't something that made me come to this realization. For me, the most important thing was that I got to this point in my life where I noticed that if I feel put down in some way, or if I am sad about something, or someone makes me feel sad, or I feel sad about a situation, then I don't want to be in that situation anymore. So I got to the stage where, and I really started noticing, I was like, actually, I don't feel good about myself right now. So then I would leave, whether this was about, leave or change something, if it was in a relationship, then I would leave. I was like, I don't want to feel bad about myself. Or if it was in another situation, if it was in a workplace, then I would maybe change jobs, or I would speak to someone, or I would change something about the situation so that I didn't have this feeling anymore. Because I was like, I don't deserve to feel like this. I don't want to deserve to just feel bad or sad about something. Of course, some people feel sad sometimes, absolutely. But I just mean, if it was kind of something that I felt I was being put down in some way or other, I was just like, no, I don't want this. And I would change something. This was kind of the thing for me, of really noticing. Now I will always notice if I feel someone maybe putting me down, even if they don't mean to, they could have the best intentions. But if I feel this way, then I will distance myself in some way.
Let me ask you something. As a way of what we teach ourselves, would it be better, Eller, if you feel that? Because see, we have to be responsible for our feelings. Feelings come from a past event, and then we can project that onto someone else, even if they're making us feel that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what do you think would be better to share with that person? This is something that's bothering me, and I just need to give you a heads up that it's going past my boundary.
I think this is kind of ideally always the best policy, being very honest. But it's also not that easy to get to this situation, I think. And now I have the confidence to, at least I think I do, to kind of say, actually, I'm not happy with this. But depending on the situation, sometimes it's very difficult. And it also depends on the situation and on the person. If it's someone that kind of builds themselves up by putting you down, in some situations, always trying to speak about things and trying to be honest about things is great. But in some cases, I think actually it's just best to change the situation, or to remove yourself from the situation in some way, if it's really putting you down. But this is my one thing, but also honesty, being completely honest, just being like, actually, no, I don't feel comfortable with this. And this could be anything, from a job, to a relationship. If you're just like, there's something that I don't really feel comfortable, or I feel like I'm being taken advantage in some way or other, then yeah, I would say definitely it's good to be able to say something if you feel comfortable to be able to do that.
I want to ask you something. If you were looking over at that little girl, because we have 1 minute left, you were looking over at that little girl and hearing yourself say what you're saying, because we learn a lot by when we share ourselves.
Yeah.
What would you say to her right now if you were looking over at her? And if you were talking to your future self as well? Because it's actually the same conversation.
Yeah. I would just say, always know your worth. Know that you're good enough, always. Everyone is good enough. And if you really believe this, also believe in yourself, because just thinking, oh, okay, I'm good enough for this, but really believing, okay, this is something that I can do. And also just, for me, it's a big thing about knowing if you're a good person, if you're doing the best that you can, if you're kind of treating everything with compassion and stuff like this, then your worth, you have such amount, I don't know if that's the right word, but so much worth that and you deserve the best. I believe this for everyone.
I truly thank you for your time. And I hope
thank you for having me.
The solutions that you've shared, I hope you got something from this conversation too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I think we learn more about ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Eller, hold on just one moment as I put you in the background, and we will move forward here. Okay.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you.